Hey, everybody. I hope you're well. I certainly missed you. It's been a minute. Life has been busy for me. It's just been so long. First, I was sick, and then I had an issue with a family member. I'll tell you about it. And then I decided to take a deep dive and get some land and I purchase a home in another state. So I've been working on getting that together. But I do want to, at first, just give you a little story and a history. I have a brother who's been very ill. He had a caretaker who turned into a girlfriend. And after about 6 or 7 years, my brother started to suffer tremendously. So now he's at a stage, he has Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, diabetes. And last year, the caretaker decided she had enough and she poured hot boiling water on him, which left him with like fourth degree burns. And he's been in a nursing home. So I've been awarded as his guardian, and I share power of attorney with my sister. I'm sharing this story with you only because there are so many things happening in the world today. And it's not just in Africa, it's all over the world. And there's a level of wickedness. And it seems like our people are mistreating one another to degrees and levels that we haven't seen before. And the universe is not pleased with what's happening. I just want to also acknowledge Naomi Jael, the woman who was demised in Ghana. She was in her 60s, had a boyfriend who was Togolese living in Ghana, and that was more than half her age. And he and a friend ended up unaliving her and taking small money as well as two vehicles before being caught. So, sister, we say your name, Naomi JL. We pray that the ancestors have met you and ushered you on your new journey. And so I also want to talk about, what I've been doing. I've decided that as much as I love Africa, like I said, I've been to 13 different African countries. I absolutely love Africa. But in order to survive in Africa, you have to know the social norms and the culture norms. And so it's safe to say that moving to Africa without a entry plan or an exit plan is dangerous. And you certainly need a lot or enough money to maintain yourself and to make sure that if you needed to leave, you have the money you need necessarily to take your next journey. So I was fortunate enough to have diplomatic relationships. And so I encourage people, if you're going to Africa, do your research, make some connections with officials before you go so that you have some kind of leverage and some kind of protection. It is good to know, you know, um, the land in which you are planning on migrating to. And, I have good relationships. I had a Gambian family that adopted me as a family member. I took on a Gambian name, and they would always laugh at me because I would never do anything that would put myself in harm's way. So the commissioner of immigration used to always tell me, "Sister, you're too security conscious. Nobody would ever fool you." And I say he's absolutely right. And I contributed that to being a woman, being a single woman traveler, having a father who served as a pastor for over 60 years, a mother and grandmother who were very spiritual women. My grandmother was also a seer. She would have dreams, or she could sit and talk to you and tell you your whole life story. So I have a whole lot of my grandmother in me, and then a neighbor who had the ability to heal using natural herbs. I would take those herbs and heal from the herbs. And I said, when you're traveling to Africa, you have to understand where you're going and the mindset of the people that the continental Africans. And so a lot of times, we hear this slogan, welcome home, but the reality of it is this: you are not welcome back in Africa. And it's not that the Africans have control over, their emotions or their feelings. It's because colonization has done a number on all African descendants. So you need to understand. It was different for me when I went to South Africa. South Africa is a little bit like America. I was in Cape Town, so it took a lot of money to maintain yourself in South Africa. It was a well-to-do neighborhood. I know South Africa had its troubles with the Afrikaans and the Africanos. You could really survive there, but South Africa wasn't my home. I chose to make Gambia my home, and I absolutely love Gambia. But after the demise of the late Ambassador Dada Fetta, I really started to rethink, the spiritual mindset and the ideology of Gambians. And then you had an influx of Gambians, Nigerians, as well as Senegalese and Ghanaians. Ghana, people from Ghana were there. So you have this mixed culture of Africans, this mixed belief, and there needs to be levels of protection. If you are a single woman and you're traveling in Africa, you have to know that you'll have a target on your back. So you need to be safe. You need to have some ideas in mind how to maintain yourself. You need to be upright, self respecting. I think I know for a matter of fact that the women who are being unalived in these countries have decided to seek relationships with boys half their age. And when you look at the extremes levels of poverty, illiteracy, the lack of employment, no skill set, no job training, and you take a young person who's caught up in this idea of making it big, doing this hip hop thing, even though Gambia is a Muslim country, the young men there still have misplaced ambitions. And it's because nobody is guiding and directing them and making sure they have the tools they need, not only to survive, but to thrive. And when we go to these countries that are despaired, that have economic issues, and there are disadvantages, we need to be in a position to make sure that we're doing what we can to contribute to that environment. Now, there is a huge difference between Americans and Black British people who go to Africa. Americans are readily seen as ATM machines. So you want to make sure that you're doing what you are called to do, but you also want to make sure that you are securing yourself and making sure that you are safe. It's okay to do philanthropic work. That's what I did for many a years. When I was in Gambia, I started going back in 2019, relocated in 2020, and left in September 2023. It's because I gave myself a timeline for the work that I was doing. Like I said, I had these connections with the government. I was working. I was the health trainer and safety coordinator for the new OIC road that you have in Gambia. And with that road was supposed to have all of the signage, all of the lights. But earlier on, I ran into some challenges sitting on that team. I was the only American on that team, the only woman on that team, with the exception of the National Road Authority. They had a female there, but they had different segments of the road that they were managing in different parts and communities within Gambia. So it was safe to say that I was able to see the networks and the inner workings of Gambia. I had a connection with the government, I had a connection with the police. So I had these interventions in case I needed it. Now, I went to be reconnected with myself and the land. That was the only thing I had on my mind. I left after the death of George Floyd. I really wanted to settle my spirit, to reconnect with myself, to find the best way forward for myself. And so I took the time in Gambia to spend time with myself, to listen to myself. It is egregious to go there desperate, seeking relationships with somebody that's not of your standard or not of your caliber. So I don't understand how you would go to a foreign country that is impoverished, literally third world country, ground zero, seeking relationships with boys half your age. It just does not make sense, especially if you're a woman who is sustaining herself, who is developed, who has enough money to maintain herself. You're going to run into some issues in the Gambia. Thank you, thank you, thank you for coming in. This is my first live. I'm trying to manage it. I appreciate you. It's been a minute. But I do want to explain the reason why I left Gambia. That third year in Gambia, I had 3 dogs. And over the course of 7 months, one of the dogs was poisoned. And then after we buried the dog, I kept finding food and bones and rice over my gate. So I would have to bring the dogs in the house. And so literally my spirit began to speak to me about safety and protection and how to protect myself in a place that was full of envy, full of greed, full of desire, full of corruption. And so I started to make sure that I was not putting myself in a position that would cause myself harm. Now, the people that I connected with were educated people, skilled people in high position. If I am in America, there's no way that I would have relationships with somebody where we're not like minded and don't think alike. It's not like I'm going to invite you to my house and you invite me to your house and I go. No, that's not happening. So I was there for business and I made sure to maintain the same kind of mindset I had that kept me safe in America was the same mindset I had there. I was there on business. I was developing or establishing relationships and friendships. I was getting to know the culture. I was being integrated into the community and accepted by the village. And so when I went out, people knew who I was and they knew the work. Oh, you're the lady that did this, that built Gambia's first outdoor school cafeteria in Telending. You're the lady that went to Janakunan village and put those boreholes and water wells in for the village. You're the lady who brought more than 800 pairs of eyeglasses and gave them to the Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital in Banjul, as well as throughout Tujarine and other places. So I had the opportunity to do philanthropic work, but I wasn't doing it by myself. I had some strong organizations backing me. It was Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity and Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, as well as my family members who knew my heart since I was a little girl. Now, Africa just didn't pop up for me. Ever since I was 6 or 7 years of age, my father taught us who we were as Hebrews, as the original people, whatever label you want to use. You have to be comfortable in your own skin. So I'm well aware of the DNA that I am cut from. And I'm also well aware that I just can't go all willy-nilly in foreign land and in foreign waters. I have to get to know the culture. I have to respect the law of the land. I have to navigate appropriately. Like Caesar said, when in Rome, do as the Romans. So if that meant that I had to cover myself and to avoid certain things to make sure these nuances stay very clear, then those were the things that I did. And for me, it wasn't about partying or hanging out. I can recall the first year I was in Gambia. I was staying at the Calabash, Palmarima Junction. And I was so excited. It was Christmas Eve. And I went to Churchill's beyond Calabash, and they was doing karaoke, and I was doing karaoke with them. I was with a good friend of mine who's a lawyer, Kebabaldi. Shout out to Mr. Kebabaldi, ESQ. Thank you so much for all your time. But we were hanging out at Churchill's, and I was singing Etta James at last, and I sent it to Ambassador Dada, and he was like, "Sister, yeah, that's good, that's real cute, but you didn't come there for that. You have to get back on track." So the ambassador reminded me of the importance of the work that needed to take place in the Gambia, and may God bless his soul, and may he live eternally in peace, for the work that he was doing. When I last spoke to him, he was hardworking in DC, making sure he was securing resources and funding for Gambia. And when I last spoke to him, he was so excited. He shared a video with me. He secured $42 million for the Gambia. And then he came for the second inauguration of the president and never made it back to the United States. But he was always passionately thinking about Gambia. The ambassador did so much for Gambia. If you go to King Nama, that's west, headed west. King Nama is fully solar. All the village has water. Every house has lights. The ambassador did a lot for the Gambia, and he was consistent with what he was doing. So the $42 million was just like tossed up in the air when the ambassador passed away. Um, there was conversations that he was unalive, that he was poisoned. I have no proof in that. But before he passed away, 2 or 3 weeks, I had a dream that he was killed. Now, I've said to you, my grandmother was a seer, and I have that ability as well. When I'm in righteousness and consciously, I'm aware and not judging and not critical and not condemning, I can see those certain things, same things as well. So I saw him and I knew that someone was after him, and that I dreamt that he was dead. And about 2 weeks after that, I got a call saying, "Sister, your brother is in the hospital. He's in Banjul. He said he wants you to pray for him. He's not doing well." And then my spirit just dropped because I had sensed it weeks before, and no, it was strange because we had so much work to do together. And when the ambassador Before he came, it was in November, December. We was planning for all the philanthropic work, all the educational work he planned for me to do. And he had all of these opportunities and things he wanted me to work on. And so when I got the call that he was in the hospital, the person said, "Sister, your brother is sick. He's in the hospital. He told me to call you and to tell you to pray for him." That day is just as vivid and clear in my mind as if it happened just a few minutes ago. And so I was in my house scurrying around trying to get myself together so that I could head to Banjul to pray for my brother in person and to be with him and to determine, what happened, because I sensed it. But before I could get dressed, I got another call and said, "Ambassador just died." And so, I was struggling with that for a long time. But after his death, greetings, sis, love you, Black Acres, greetings, brother. But after his death, my mindset changed about the country. I started to see the political landscape and how things were unraveling. I was also listening to a few people who had purchased land from Blackset and other groups of people who was then in turn scammed out of their monies. And so all of a sudden you had all of these lawsuits against these diasporans who was pushing this come home and buy land and do this and do that. But these were the same people who were stealing from African Americans. And so this sister who purchased a lot of land, she was able to get an attorney and get her money back, but she was one of the only ones who was able to get her money back from Blackset. And so that was the downfall of when I began to see and sense a year ahead of time what I was feeling. I had given myself 3 years to do what I need to do in Gambia, as well as be able to survive off of the money that I had taken. And once the money dissipated, I knew that it was time for me. I said, if I get to this point and I have to dip into something, then I have to go. And so it was very clear that even though I was working, I was making a salary. When you go to Gambia, your money is not going to be the same. Granted, it was good for me to be in a country and to be able to make money. It was decent money for the country, but it still wasn't enough money to sustain myself and for the work that I was doing. I didn't want to leverage myself out and put myself in a position where I was relying on other people to do things for me. Now, that reliance is not a bad thing, but like I just said, I was a single traveler who have traveled the country and was in the United States Air Force. So for me, I knew security and protection was of the utmost. I could no longer think about what I can do in this country where my brother, the ambassador, Dada Fetta, invited me to do this work. What am I going to do that he's not here? I cried, and I still cry. It still upsets me that I had to abandon the vision that he had for me. And his wife encouraged me, stay there and finish the work. I believe that I finished the work, and when I became worried about the possibilities of something happening to myself, then that was time for me to plan my exit strategy, because I don't have time to be frustrated. I don't have time to be worried about certain things, because life happens. But when you're on high alert 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, it affects your health and your central nervous system. But I was able to maintain my health because I stayed at home and I only went out when I had to take care of business or when I had to go to the store. You never saw me out partying and hanging out. That's not my thing right there. So I want to say, greetings, Rich King. I'm glad you spent 10 months in East Africa. I hope it went well. So I want to say that when we're making this journey, we have to understand the reason why we're choosing to journey. We have to understand that. And then we have to give ourselves grace and give ourselves room to make errors. And then we have to give ourselves an opportunity to say, okay, this is my high peak. This is when I am finished, and don't go beyond that. I know women who travel to Gambia, to Ghana, in search of whatever it is. But you're not going to find it if you're not whole yourself. Nobody can make you happy. Nobody can make you whole. You have to be whole. You have to value yourself in order for someone else to value you. And so that was one of the things that I learned when I was in Gambia. You know, grace is sufficient. And especially if you've given yourself grace and mercy, we have experienced so many things as a people. And we need to understand the mental trap that has been played out for us is still being played out. I'm not going to forget about the European slave trade. I am going to do that documentary. I think that's important. I think that will liberate many of your minds and give you a different outlook about life, about history, about how we as a people have been marginalized and made to be very small, smaller than an ant. But if you look at the ant kingdom and how they protect their queen and the tunnels, what they're able to do together as a unit will astonish you. If you ever look at the ant and how the ant collectively works together to protect its queen, then you will understand how we as a people need to navigate and move together. And so for me, leaving Gambia was a difficult decision, but it was a decision that I had to make. I'm a seasoned woman. I'm not a young woman. Even though I may look it, thank you so much, I am not. And so I had to make sure that with all the herbs, with all the tinctures and tonics I took, I've been taking herbs for over 35, 40 years. I've done integrative health nutrition. I'm able to maintain myself. But when you start going through circles of life, you're going to need someone to run some lab tests, to do some necessary blood work on you. And it was like, God forbid, if something happens, listen to me. I was in the villages. I was working with the local clinics. I was getting grants and aids to those clinics. I saw the condition of the hospital. I saw the condition of the local clinics. No one should ever be placed in a position. As a matter of fact, when I worked on the road, one of our safety leaders got injured, got hit by one of the vehicles. We had to take him to a clinic beyond Coastal Road, somewhere over in that area. And when I got there and saw the condition of the hospital, I'm like, who in their right mind can survive? Now, granted, you're already exposed to bacteria, you're already exposed to filth and flies and animals. You don't have electricity. You don't have the medicine you need. It's simple, but antibiotics could take care of a lot of things. Peroxide, alcohol, simple things could be happening, but those things are not happening in these clinics. And when I saw the simplicity of what was needed. Because this young man had something rolled on his feet or ankle, something was broken, but he stayed in the hospital 6 months because they didn't have the necessary things to make sure the young man could have a viable life. And when you look at Gambia, it's a young country, and people die young, younger than they need to in that country. Life expectancy there is about 40 something years of age, if you're lucky enough to make it to 40 years of age. And so you have all of these things compiled upon one another. And then you have poverty, you have illiteracy, you have the lack of employment, then you have the women and gender issue that you have in that country, and most of all, you have religion. Now, I can say without a shadow of a doubt, like I said, my daddy was a bishop for over 60 years. I was raised in religion, and I became a spiritual person by choice because I saw that religion kills, and sometimes it controls you and it controls your mind, and it doesn't give you the ability to think for yourself. And most people take religion, they don't study the word for themselves. They take the word of someone else who's a so-called leader, they take their word as whole, as the Bible, as the infallible word of God or the ancestor, and they take that word and live it out. It's the same thing in the Muslim world in Gambia. They take religion, but many of them can't read the Quran for themselves, so they have no idea what the Quran is saying. They have to trust an imam to give them the right word. And you're looking at African spirituality. You have all the foundations of beliefs in Africa, but you also have African spirituality that trumps being a Muslim, trumps being a Christian, trumps being an atheist, whatever you want to call it. The marabouts rank. African spirituality is big in these countries, and they rely on it. So you have people taking money to marabouts that they don't have in hopes of getting money. They will sacrifice themselves and anybody to try to get ahead. So, ladies, I'm encouraging you, and I want to know what I can do to help. When I was in Gambia, I was quietly making moves. I wasn't doing anything big, but I know for a fact that um, I did what I was supposed to do in Gambia, and I made some beautiful connections, and I will always be a resource and a help. So my goal is to work with Black Acres of the Gambia and anyone else to make sure that diasporans have a place to go, a place of refuge. So, I want to work with some land in Sanyang to make sure that when we get in trouble and you need a place to lay your head, not bringing any drama, not bringing your boyfriend and all that. If you say you need help and if you say you need food, come get the help, come get the food. But nobody's going to be supporting you because you're making bad decisions and that your lifestyle, let me just say it, is raggedy and you got some serious issues. Nobody is supporting that. So my goal is to try to develop a refuge for those who choose to stay in Gambia. And, I don't want to be biased, but I have to be biased because there is a difference between Black British and Black Americans. There is a difference between Black Jamaicans and Black Americans. Now, the Black British and the Jamaicans, they know how to survive and live with continental Africans. They know how. But Americans are struggling to do that. And I honestly want my brothers and sisters to embrace the continent, to know what that is like, but also to be safe. So I want to build um, us a space in Yang. And I want it to be a place of refuge. Now, I myself will come visit Gambia, but I can't live in Gambia. Been there, done that, and I'm okay with it. Okay. But it doesn't mean that I don't have love for Gambia. I do. I just know what I need in order to live my best life and to be happy. I've worked too hard. I've struggled too hard to go somewhere and struggle again. That's not what I'm called to do at this stage in my life. I want to enjoy my life, take it easy, and to be a resource and in a position to help others. I can't help you if I'm there struggling with you. I just simply, it doesn't make sense. And so I need to make it make sense. And I want to be able to pour in to my American family who choose to go to Gambia, Togo, Ghana, wherever you choose to go. We need to be readily available. We need to start bridging the gap and having these connections and Black Wall Streets. Again, we need to know. So I want to build this safe haven in Yang. So when you get into trouble, you don't have to deal with homelessness. You don't have to deal with a lack of food. You don't have to turn to wayward ways in order to survive. So I want to work with some people on the ground. We got a couple things. On the table, have drawn up a couple of plans for this building. So my next initiative is going to be talking to the government, US government, the ambassador, to see what kind of grants and funding, because this is the reality. Even America, the government is asking Americans to travel abroad, and some are even paying for that. So I want to tap into some of those grants and some of those fundings to make sure if you go to Gambia, and I say Gambia because that is where I got my real start from and taste. Although I traveled other places, Gambia was the real first place that really pricked my heart and made me feel home, where I was able to immerse myself with the culture, look at it from a village perspective, work with the village women, learn the culture, hear their struggles, understand what make these women and men tick, and still right today they are still buzzing me and calling me and keeping me informed. And I love so many people who had the heart to travel to Gambia and who are there. Oh my God, if I could hit the lottery, Black Acres of the Gambia, y'all would be sitting real pretty. So I'm just hoping that something happens big enough that will allow me to support the people that are doing the right thing. And I'm going to say to you time and time again, be careful of your connections and be safe. I know a lot of people are having fun, they're partying, they're hanging out. But while you're doing that, others are watching you. While you're catching taxi rides home with the same taxi driver, they know your schedule, they know when you're coming and going. I can recall a time where I had a gate man at my house in Tujarene, and I went to the Big Apple with a Fula woman, and we were partying, have a good time, and we did a little video. I put it on Facebook. By the time I got back home, this same gate man had climbed up to the second level and was trying to break in, left condoms by the back door. But I ship with me some of those sticks that go under your door, the security sticks, so he couldn't break in. But I had to call the police to get rid of him because he didn't want to go. So I'm like, okay, brother, I got this gate man here. This is what happened. And he was just around the corner. So they flew around the corner to make sure I was safe. And then he packed up and left. So the very same people that you're feeding, listen to me, the people that you're feeding and paying to work around your house are the very same people that are going to be envious of you, that going to be jealous of you, that's going to set you up for failure. I've had it done before. Even Gambians who are diasporans and live abroad. I have nurses, doctors, good friends who are Gambians. They experience the same thing. They do. And even from their family members, when they're building properties and sending money back home for certain things, and they go there and nothing has been done. So it's not just you because you're a diaspora, it is because there is critical needs in the country and people are starving, people are desperate. And now you have this pandemic, this epidemic of drugs, of pills, of prostitution, of people going to back way trying to get out of Gambia. And so now I understand why Africans want to leave Akbulan. I understand that. I clearly can see it because there lacks the opportunity for advancement and growth and education. Not everybody has the opportunity to be educated, and not every family can educate their children. Only a select few are chosen. And if you go to sixth or seventh grade, you are considered to be educated in the Gambia. Granted, you can't read, you can't write, you can't spell, but you are educated. And it's not just the local, you will find that in government high official ranking officials, you find that mindset. So everybody is hustling. Everybody is surviving, but it is time for us as a people to go beyond surviving and start thriving. When will we start thriving? There are very few people making mad moves in the Gambia. And, the connections I had, I was very cautious when I navigated. I listened to people. I watched your language, your body language is speaks volumes compared to the words that you say. And so I was watching people, and I understand always, and so true, the workers who work for you are the one who would try to get you. Everyone be careful. You are so right, Black Acres. You are absolutely right. You have to be careful and cautious how you navigate. These people have a target on your back, and it's because one, religion allows it. You're not a Muslim. Two, you're a foreigner. And if you're American, you're looked at as an ATM machine. They know the difference between Black Americans and Black British people. They know the Black Americans come and spend money. They know the British people come, buy land, and hustle and do what they need to do. There's extreme difference. And I'm not talking bad about the British people, and I'm not talking bad about the Americans. I'm just describing the difference between the two. And my hope is that we will begin to understand these differences. And most of all, you'll get to understand yourself and learn how to navigate these waters. I think it's beautiful that you decided to return. I know that there's ample opportunities, but it's also a time for realignment and readjustment. You have to spend time with yourself, shedding this Western mindset and this Western skin. It's like a snake shedding its skin. You literally have to crawl up out of that, sit with yourself till you regenerate your cells and your skin, and then you know how to navigate, and then you have the power and the strength to move forward. A snake that is shedding its skin is laying still, it's laying dormant, it's not moving around because it is a process, and it's a process that we go through. um, Yes, you're right, Rich King. They do think that we are rich, and we are not rich. But what we are, rich in spirit. We know that it's going to take us sharing with one another because of our diasporan experience. We know that we survive better when we're together, and they don't understand that. But the dynamics for them is that they take care of their family. The problem that I'm seeing now is this drug problem. It's a serious problem, and there's no way out of it for them. There's no way out. You don't have proper mental health facilities, you don't have drug treatment facilities. A person can't go and get a detox. The prison system, what are you going to do? Arrest them, throw them in mile 7, mile 3, or whatever it's called, mile whatever, put them there without any assistance. I was just looking at something a month ago that was on What's on Gambia, where a man dug up 2 bodies and had them in a bed with him. There's a serious problem in the Gambia, and every day somebody is being unalived. And it's like my heart is just going out for us who choose to, you want to experience Akbulan and want to make a contribution. How do we do it? And how do we maintain our safety? What is the net that we've provided? Do you have a plan? Do you have a vision? What does that look like? Do you have steps to accomplish your plan? Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what if you have issues along step 4 or 5? What is your workaround? How do you overcome the challenges? So we need to look at the strength, weaknesses, threats, as well as opportunities. We need a real SWOT analysis when we go to these foreign lands, and particularly when we're dealing with people that we're not accustomed to. Few people have went to Gambia and survived it. And I could have survived it, but I chose not to. I'll go back, but I'm thinking about, how do you bridge the gap between the two cultures? How do you make it rich enough so that when you're hearing these stories from the US or from the UK or of Australia or Native Americans who are Black, wherever we are, when we're hearing this story, we need to understand the context in which these stories are being told. And it's to keep us separated, and it's to keep us apart. How do we start developing clear relationships so that we can bridge a gap? And the people that are narrating and telling our story is us. Why are we allowing history and the people with power who have massacred, destroyed us as a people, narrate or tell our story? When will we start to tell our own story? Is the question. When will you be empowered to encourage and to tell our story with truth, with tenacity? And sometimes that just takes us to step back and take a look at ourselves and not be in a rush to accomplish certain things. So that is the main reason why I left Gambia. I felt like I gave myself 3 years to accomplish certain things. And when the person who invited me to the country unexpectedly was demised, it's like, how do I reinvent myself? And so I got a contract with the OIC Road Project. I knew that contract and that training was 3 months. So that gave me 3 clear months to think about the next best step. And so when that 3 months was at an end, I had already decided, okay, I have to go back to America, and I have some things I need to accomplish when I go back. And now that I am back, I can see that I made the best decision for myself. Is because I cannot um, engage in this development conversation and sustainability conversation without bringing meat to the table, because it's okay to talk about it, but what can I do to impact change? And you can't impact change if you don't have the funds to impact the change. And I don't have the funds in Gambia to impact change. That means I retired early, taking my retirement out, and I was advised by a good friend of mine who's African, who is an engineer, owns his own aeronautical company. He took his 401k back after living in America for 30, 40 years and went back to Africa and developed an aeronautical company where he builds drones to fly into oil wells for security. And he took his 401k and went back and got into a lot of trouble. So I wanted to make sure that I can sustain myself, that I can maintain my health, and that I would be able to travel and do the things that I love doing. So it's been a while since I've been on. I just wanted to let you know what was happening. And I want to say my brother is on the road to recovery. He suffered fourth-degree burns. So you don't have just this destruction in Africa, it's in America as well. She was a paid caregiver who put boiling hot water on my brother, incapacitated him. He's had to have some amputations, but I'm so grateful he is making it. He is on his road to recovery. There's evil everywhere. And just because you're paying a person to do the work doesn't mean that their heart is in it, honey. You better have one eye open all the time on the people that's in your circle. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, then you better travel solo, sweetie, because it's a lot of wickedness going on. And it's not just people are being unalived in Africa. We know it happens in America every day, but you have levels of protection here. And you have access that you can get to. If you're a good writer or you're in some organizations, you can have some coverage, some leverage. But when you're in Africa and you don't speak the language, you don't have the leverage. But if you guys ever get into trouble, if you're in Gambia, reach out to me. I know some people, I can reach out to them and help you honestly if you're in need. And again, my goal is to create a space where diasporans can go. And my focus is African Americans who go. I know there are a lot of diasporans from all over the world, but this particular place is going to be for Americans. And it's not that I'm against anybody else, is because I know our struggles and how passionate we are. We're a passionate, loving, and kind people. And it is also, we can be misdirected in many kind of ways because we are a sensing, feeling, touching, let me help my neighbor kind of people, regardless of what you may think or feel. Americans are really like that, especially if you grew up in the South. We're very deeply connected, deeply rooted. If you're in New York or if you're in the Midwest, it's the same thing. And your parents grew up in the South. We are very well connected people. So my goal is to make sure we stay that way. And I want to create a space that offers, these mental health checks as well as health and wellness. If we can get the right team on board, I've been offered a medical facility by the late ambassador's brother to come back to Gambia and manage. And I said to him, I can't go back to Gambia and live, but what we can do is try to get the resources, the equipment, and the medical supplies needed. If diasporans are in trouble, they will have a medical facility to call home. So, and that's the goal. I've been on here 52 minutes, 53 minutes, my first live. I want to thank you guys for chiming up. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Black Acres. I love you guys so much, and I do appreciate you. And I want you to be safe wherever you go and to understand, I believe that it is a good idea to get connected to yourself, wherever that may be, where you can quiet your spirit. Take the time to get to know you as a person, know your likes, your dislikes, your abilities, and what you're capable of. I think that's a fabulous thing to do. And I think we all have a human responsibility to know what our purpose is. And sometimes that requires you to sit in peace. So I acknowledge you today and I say ashe, 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 and send you lots of love for your journey, and that we're going to be working this thing out for you and for diasporans, but we have to do better. When we know better, we'll do better. Sending you peace, love, and light. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Take care, you guys. Bye bye.